All right, so we are going to start with circles, section 12.7. So if you look, I like yellow better. This is the equation of a circle, where if we take the opposite sign of H, the opposite sign of K, that's going to be our center. And then R is going to be our radius. Okay, so we are going to use that exact same setup, and we're just going to substitute in what the center is and what the radius is. So in this case, the center is at -1, -1, and the radius is 1, 2, 3 units long. So, substituting in, we have x minus h, which is this guy, and this one's k. So if we do x minus -1, that actually means that we are adding 1. Minus a negative makes a positive. Squared plus y minus a -1, which means we're adding, equals r squared, which you can actually go ahead and write that as 9. Okay, number 2, same process. We are going to be plugging things into that same formula. So x minus, this is our h, 4 squared, plus y minus, this is our k, 5 squared, equals, and then our radius is 8, and 8 squared is 64, so it's going to equal 64. So we can also, if we are just given 2 points, if we are given the center and some point on the outside, we can actually figure out what the radius is going to be. So, which means that we can write the equation of the circle. So if we plug in our center, so x, I'm going to zoom in here, x minus 3 squared, I just took that from the center, plus y minus 7 squared equals r squared. We don't know the radius yet. Well, they gave us another point, right? They didn't give us the radius, but they did give us another point. So I can actually take that other point and plug those numbers in right here and right here. Okay, so I'm going to plug in a 1 and a 7. So 1 minus 7 squared plus, okay, I'm changing numbers on you guys, sorry, 1 minus 3 squared, and then the 7's going to go here. 7 minus 7 squared equals r squared. So 1 minus 3 is -2. 7 minus 7 is 0 equals r squared. Well, 0 squared is still just 0. And -2 squared, -2 times -2 is a positive 4. So 4 is equal to r squared. And you can figure out what r is if you really want to, but remember, all we're doing is plugging it into the formula. And this is already r squared right here, so we can just plug in 4 for that spot. But if you wanted to find the radius, remember that when you have something squared, we can square root both sides so that we get 2 is equal to r. Okay, and so now we're going to plug that in. We already have the formula where we plugged in the 3 and the 7 for h and k, so x minus 3 plus y minus 7 equals, now r squared, we already found that. If r is 2, that means that r squared is 4. So that's the equation of the circle. Okay, we're going to do the same type of thing right here. So I'm going to start with my x minus, this is the center right here. So x minus a negative 2, minus a negative means we're going to be adding, plus y minus 6 squared equals r squared. So now we're going to plug in 3 and 6 for x and y, which gives us 3 plus 2 squared plus 6 minus 6 squared equals r squared. 5 squared plus 0 squared equals r squared, which means that 25 is equal to r squared. And again, we could square root both sides and say that our radius is 5, but that's not really what the question was asking us for. It's asking us for the equation of the circle. So our answer, we're going to keep the x plus 2 squared and the y minus 6 squared equals, and now we know that r squared is actually 25. So that's our final answer. And you can use an equation to graph a circle by identifying its center and its radius. So in this first question, number 5, the center, we're going to be looking here and here. So the center, we're going to take the opposite of each one of those. So it's going to be positive 1 and positive 2. And then our radius is, we're going to look at that 9, but we're going to take the square root of that number, which gives us 3. So we're going to plot our center, which is at 1, 2. And then with a radius of 3, so we're going to go out 1, 2, 3 spots. And that's our circle. And for number 6, same thing. Our center, we're going to take the opposite sign of the number next to the x and the number next to the y. So positive 3 and negative 1. And then our radius is going to be the square root of this number. The square root of 4 is 2, so our radius is 2. So our center is going to be at 3, negative 1. And then our radius, we're going to go out 1 unit and out 2 units. Okay, so I'm going to show you these ones in case you just want to fill in your notes here, but I'm also going to show you with algebra tiles why we do this thing called completing the square. So we need this problem to look like the problems that we've done in the past, the ones that have x minus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals the number. So find the center and radius of the circles. We need to get all of the x's together and all of the y's together first, and all of the numbers over on the other side, which is what has already happened. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave a little space next to the x and a little space next to the y. We're going to be adding something to this. Okay, so let's see. Let me just show you this part. So x squared minus 4x plus blank. X squared minus 4x plus blank. So I'm going to take an x squared, and I'm going to take negative 4x. So I'm going to put 2 on this side, and then I'm actually going to put 2 on the bottom. So I'm just splitting it in half because remember our goal is to make a square. This is called completing the square, right? So we need to figure out what would go in that missing spot to complete the square. Well, remember that if we have an x squared, that means that this is x and x because x times x is x squared. And for the red parts, this is a negative 2x, right? Or negative 2, rather. Because remember that each one of these units is 1. It's actually this unit that is an x. So this is a minus 2, and this is a minus 2. And to figure out what goes in that other box, we have to do this number times this number. Think about our box method that we've talked about before. So that would actually give us a positive 4. So actually what's going in this last spot is plus 4. The other way you can do that, if you don't have algebra tiles handy, you can use our box method, and you can say that this is an x squared. Because we had the negative 4x, you're going to put 2 of them here and 2 of them here, right? And then you can take out an x, take out an x. You should be able to take out a negative 2 and a negative 2, because remember, you want to multiply to that negative 2x. So the other spot has to be a negative 2. And then to get this spot right here, we do negative 2 times negative 2 to figure out what will complete the square. Okay, so we added a 4. So I'm going to add 4 right here, but whatever I do to one side, I guess I'll do it in the actual spot it's supposed to be in. Whatever I do to one side, I also have to add to the other side of the equal sign. Right, so now we're going to do the second part. This part here. Y squared plus 2y plus blank. We need to figure out what in that blank will complete the square. So it doesn't give me any y's, that's okay. Here, I'll just show you on here. So if we're doing our y's, we have a y squared, and we have one y here and one y here, because we need to take that middle term and split it in half, right? And put one of them on one side and one on the other side so that we can continue to make a square. So if we are taking something out here, the thing that they have in common is a y. If we are taking something out here, the thing that they have in common is a y. So now we're going to write what's left. So in this bubble, if we took out a y, what would be left? It would be the coefficient 1. Same thing here. So then the thing that would work in that last box would be 1 times 1, which is also a 1. So we're going to be adding 1 in this space. And whatever you do to one side, you also have to add to the other side. The shortcut, if you are somebody who likes to memorize something, is to do this for each one of them. B divided by 2, and then square your answer. So in this case, 2 divided by 2, and then square your answer. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Square your answer. That's 1. And that's exactly what we added. Okay, so we're going to bring that down. Bring down the 4, bring down the 1, and then 4 plus 1, that's 5. Okay, and then when we are, when we move to this step, we are actually just going to take half of this number, so minus 2. The reason we do that is because if I go back to my example here, look what happened. Woo. I can't zoom in. That's okay. Look what happened on the top of the boxes, and same thing here. Right, so if I bring that down, we know that we can write something like that as x minus 2 times x minus 2, but that's the same thing as x minus 2 squared. So all we're doing is rewriting it as x minus 2 squared. Same thing here. We have x plus, or y plus 1 and y plus 1. So we're going to do y plus 1 squared. But again, all we did was really just take half of that. And then 4 plus 5 gives us 9. So our center, now it looks exactly like the other ones that we've done. Our center is going to be a positive 2 and a negative 1. And then our radius is the square root of the other side, which will give us a 3.